สวัสดีค่ะสวัสดีแขกผู้มีเกียรติอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะคะท่านไหนมาใหม่ก็ขออนุญาตต้อนรับอีกครั้งหนึ่งค่ะเข้าสู่งาน Thailand Cybersecurity 2017 นะคะขณะนี้เรากำลังจะเริ่มหัวข้อที่ 2 กันแล้วซึ่งหัวข้อที่ 2 ก็น่าสนใจไม่แพ้กับอีก 3 หัวข้อในวันนี้เลยนะคะนั่นก็คือ Safety Cyber Kids at School and Study Case นั่นเองเรามาดูกันว่าระบบการจัดการเรื่องของการป้องกัน Safety Cyber Kids ในโรงเรียนเนี่ยจะเป็นยังไงได้บ้างเพราะว่าเยาวชนของเราก็ถือว่าเป็นผ้าขาวนะคะทำให้สังคมสามารถพัฒนาไปได้ไกลนั่นเองนะคะวันนี้ก็จะมาดูกันได้รับเกียรติจาก guest speaker นะคะท่านเดินทางมาทำงานในประเทศไทยสักระยะหนึ่งแล้วไม่ใช่คนไทยนะคะแต่ว่าแน่นอนมีประสบการณ์กับเด็กไทยมามากมายเลยเดี๋ยวจะมาแชร์ให้ฟังมี2ท่านด้วยกันนะคะ Ladies and gentlemen And the second topic of safety cyber kids at school and study case, we are honored to have our guest speaker, not only one, but 2 guest speakers. And they are now working at Patumwan demonstration school and will be sharing a lot of things, a lot of interesting things in school with all of you today. If you are now ready, may I invite first Mr. Rollin Miller and the second Mr. James Sayer ขอเสียงปรบมือต้อนรับทั้ง2ท่านด้วยค่ะ Please welcome.
All right, good morning to everybody. As noted, we are teachers from Patumwan. I'll just start off and tell you a little bit about myself. I am the head of learning in the English program at Patumwan, and I also teach social studies. And I've been teaching in Thailand for 20 years, and hope to share some of the things that I've picked up over those years regarding student learning and how technology is affecting student learning in the classroom. So look forward to talking to you.
Hey, thank you, Rollin. We'll be hearing from Rollin in a few minutes. I'd like to introduce myself. I am the head of mathematics and head of technology for the English program at Patumwan Demonstration School. I'm also involved in training, actually, I know that Microsoft is a sponsor here, so excuse me for this, on the Google platform in education. I've been in Sweden, Qatar, various different countries working on that. And also I've worked with UNESCO on digital safety and also some e-learning Thailand conferences as well. Well, we're really here today. I know there's a lot of tech professionals here today. We're here from an educator's perspective, and in fact, actually a parent's perspective as well. We're both parents. Could I just do a quick show of hands? How many people are involved in education in Thailand? Is anybody working in education? Okay, so we've got, 1 or 2 people. How many people here are parents? Who has children at home? Okay, a few more people. So, yes, we're talking from the education perspective, but we're also going to share some things which are really important to parents as well. Evolution of mankind. Let's start with the big one. Look at that. So there we go. We started in the caves way back when, and we kind of came through to the 1980s, and we're all hunched over our computers. And as times move on, we got these laptops and these iPads on our laps, and here we are now. Does anybody ride the BTS or the MRT? Everybody's walking around with the phones today. Mobile devices are ubiquitous with life today. Everybody has a mobile device, and as we move forward, hopefully we're going to evolve in time, where we're not going to be looking down at our device. We can stand up again and walk proud. That's kind of like, I like that. I think that's a funny graphic to show where we're going to. Now, when we talk about cyber safety, as the topic was mentioned there, the phrase that we use in schools is actually digital citizenship. And digital citizenship takes a lot of what we educate in schools and really applies that, the idea of citizenship, into a digital world. So what I want to do now is just sort of introduce where we are and where's the rationale behind some of the education we do with digital citizenship. Secondly, I'm going to talk about some of the platforms and some of the solutions to working with digital citizenship and safety in schools. And lastly, we're going to tie up is where we're going to go to in the future. Lucian To, it's actually a friend of mine. He works with Google out of Singapore. This is the last period in time that we will be thinking about online lives and offline lives as separate entities. Let's think about that for a moment. We're all old enough to know, maybe 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have mobile phones or smartphones. But children today, they all have smartphones. They all have mobile phones. They're very used to this online life. So we're still experiencing an online life. We're online with Facebook. We're online with all this social media, Line, and so on. But we have our offline lives as well, where we socialize in our social circles. But children today, those two are merged together. They don't have online and offline. They don't think of Facebook as their online social circle. That is their social circle. The online and the offline is very much merged together. I just want to introduce some of the background to where we get to with digital safety education. And very quickly, you're probably very aware of this, the IDI, the ICT Development Index. What it does, it takes into account infrastructure access, capabilities, and ICT use. And it produces a scale here of ICT readiness and the Internet Development Index around the world. And we can see across there, on the leftmost side there, we have Europe. But let's take a look at Asia Pacific. So here we are in Thailand, and we know that Thailand is quite far developed, certainly in Bangkok and the major cities. But if we look at Asia Pacific there, we can see you have this massive range of internet readiness and internet development. Obviously, we can imagine some of the countries on the lower end where they are, and at the top of Asia Pacific, there are countries like Hong Kong and Singapore. And I think Thailand is very, very close to the top there as well. This is a couple of years old, but this again is about internet readiness. Korea right at the top there, and we'll come back to talking about Korea a little bit later. But these are some of the countries that have developed infrastructure in IT. They're very advanced in their use of IT, and they also have very good programs to educate youngsters as well on the risks associated with that. And I think this is what it drills down to. Again, this is a chart, and this is broken down by least developed countries to most developed countries. And if we look on the right-hand side there, fixed internet lines. And I'm sure you're all aware of this, but fixed internet lines, they're really old. And who's using fixed internet lines? Well, it's the most developed countries, the US and Europe. But where are we going? Who wants to plug their device into the wall? Nobody's plugging their device in anymore. We've all gone wireless. And this is where it's really, really interesting to be in these very fast developing countries on the left-hand side here. And we can see we've got these mobile connections. Everybody's running a mobile connection now. And that's what we're working with. And we really have to separate, if we're thinking about Europe and America and how people use the internet and get online, and then we're thinking about Asia and these very fast developing economies, we really do have to separate those when we consider how we're going to approach digital readiness. So we're moving to a mobile-first economy. And I'm sure it's the same in Thailand. I know there are companies in China which work solely on the smartphone. They're all mobile ready. They run their entire business on a smartphone. Now, when we bring it down to kids, let's bring it down a few years. And when we're talking with kids, obviously, as soon as we give a child a device, a connected device, there are going to be some risks involved to that. And we're well aware there's a lot of media about some of the challenges on keeping kids safe online. One of the big risks, of course, being online is their sexual content. We don't want our younger kids to have access to this sexual content, but it exists. It's out there. We've got to accept it. Cyberbullying is another thing. Some very topical comments this week from a certain US president and cyberbullying. We know it exists, and it happens everywhere, at every level of society. So these are some of the risks. Now, how do we manage these risks without preventing our kids from being productive? Now, I put down here meeting new people as a risk, and we'll come back to that in a second. Just for now, I want to talk about some of the opportunities. An opportunity, of course, is creating a community. This could be a learning community. It could be a social community. It could be your geographical community in your village, having an online community there. Socializing, of course, Line and Facebook. Entertainment, video. And meeting new people is an opportunity. So we've got this dichotomy. We have these two opposing forces. We have meeting new people as a risk. Meeting new people as an opportunity. So things like this, and there's more of them, they kind of fit in the middle. So how are we going to prepare our future children to be ready with this? This is a survey on internet safety that we conducted within our school. So this is just a small set of students, 350 students that we conducted. And one of the questions we asked, have you ever been cyberbullied? And we're directly saying, have you been cyberbullied? No, 44%. Yes, 14%. Of course, yes, 14%. That's a concern. 14% of students said, yes, they've been cyberbullied. But for me, a bigger concern is 41% of students said maybe they had been cyberbullied. They weren't really sure because they don't really understand the definition of being cyberbullied. What is teasing and what is being cyberbullied? What should they tell somebody about? And what should they learn to manage? Now, within that subset of students that had accepted that they had been cyberbullied, we asked another question. We said, well, did you report it? Did you tell anybody? And this was quite a positive outcome. In one regard, only 40% of students reported the cyberbullying that had occurred. So that's way too low. That's something we need to challenge. We need to work on that. But in a positive, we then broke down, well, if they had been cyberbullied and if they had reported it, who did they report it to? And I think this is super interesting. 40% of students reported cyberbullying to their parents. Great, that's good. They have an open communication with their parents. Around about 20% of the students had reported it to school. Again, this is something we could do better on. Cyberbullying, schools should be more involved with. 19% had reported it to the service provider. So that could be Facebook or Google or whatever provider they had noticed the cyberbullying on. And another 19%, a further 19% reported this to the authorities. And I think this is great. We have students who reported their cyberbullying to the police. They had reported their cyberbullying to a lawyer or even to a criminal judge in one case. So it's very interesting that even though we have this low rate of reporting, but when they do report, they're able to find these people to report to. And this, on just aside, we asked another question of students using passwords without permission. I'm sure if you have a son or a daughter in school, you've probably seen this before, but it is a problem that students don't understand the responsibility that they have with their accounts. And we asked the students, did you use a password without permission? The girls, 32% of the people that said they had used a password were girls. A whopping 67.7%, nearly 70% were boys. I thought it was kind of funny, really, because we know what boys are getting up to. But what boys are doing, they're just exploring much more. They're testing those boundaries in this case. It's only something to think about. Now, this is very much academic research. I'll let you read that, and I'll explain what it actually means. Children have inherited a popular discourse that is characterized by fear, primarily by fear. So what we're doing right now is we're not really educating the children. We're making them scared. They're getting fearful of getting online. If not moral panic, which potentially inhibits their capacity to imagine and articulate the opportunities digital media affords to them. So what we're doing right now is we're educating these children to be scared of the internet, and they're so scared of it, they can't think of the possibilities of how they can be productive and make things and create. So that's a problem. We shouldn't be scaring the kids. You don't want a child to be too scared to ride a bicycle. You don't want them to be too scared to go to school. We have to manage and balance those risks for them. And one of the terms that has come out in education is digital resilience. By digital resilience, we mean the social and emotional literacy and digital competency to positively respond to deal with any risks they might be exposed when accessing social media or going online. Well, what do we really mean? Is giving children the tools to be able to deal with these risks and recognize those risks, and not to be scared of them, but instead to be mature, to step back, and to think about it and make these decisions. So there's this positive correlation, and this is all research-backed. There's a positive correlation between exposure to internet, exposure to risks, and building resilience. So we try to protect children by keeping them offline. We're not educating them. There's a positive correlation between getting them online, educating them about risks, and developing this digital resilience and building those skills. So that's some of the sort of academic background to where we're at with digital citizenship in schools. What I'm going to do now is just share sort of 2 or 3 things that are happening in education. And this is all very new. A lot of this stuff that's come out in the last 10 years, and some of these platforms I'm going to share are in the last 2 years. This first one is called Rewrites. This is based out of Australia, but it's a global platform. And Rewrites is a forum. Essentially, it's a forum where children can share their views on online safety. And more than that, they're sharing their thoughts about the ideas and rights that they should have. I just want to show 20 seconds of a video the first video just for 20 seconds. It's a little bit difficult to hear his voice, but I'll explain to you what he says afterwards.
For those children with access to digital media technologies, they are so embedded in their everyday lives that many find it hard to imagine a world without them.
I can imagine because sebab saya sendiri
I was born in the internet era.
So saya tak dapat bayangkan macam mana saya mungkin lihat sebab
I cannot imagine a life without the
setiap
internet.
hari untuk pelajaran, untuk segala keperluan yang sekarang ni memang sangat perlu.
Porque
Okay,
yo no
thank you.
puedo,
Yeah.
por mi edad, vivir una-
I love that comment. He's born in the internet age. We're asking him, can you imagine life without internet? What if you turn off a connection? He's like, what? Turn off my connection? I can't imagine it. I'm connected to the internet. I use it for everything. I cannot imagine a life without internet. I think that's great. So that's Rewrites. That's a platform for gaining the student voice. And we need children's voices when we have these conversations. We shouldn't be all of us adults talking about these voices. I think we need the student voice as well. Just going to flip past this. Oops. Okay. There's another platform that is a collaboration between a group of Singapore educators and Korean educators. It's widely accepted that Korea and Singapore have the most advanced programs for dealing with online education, digital citizenship, and so on. In fact, Korea has a program that begins with children 6 years old in schools. They teach kids at 6 years old how to deal with the internet and how to deal with it safely. A DQI initiative came out as a collaboration. And I really like this comment, it takes a village. And what we mean by it takes a village, it doesn't take a village in rural Thailand. What we mean is it takes a village of people. Educators, parents, students, and also administration and governmental organizations, and government itself. Rollin is going to talk a little bit about that a little later, so we'll come back to that. This platform, DQ World, if you're a parent, copy this down. If you have 9 to 12-year-olds, copy this down, because this is really, really good. DQ World is an online platform, and it combats 8 different pillars of digital citizenship. I won't go through all of these, but one of these is about having social media policy, thinking about your digital footprint, and also about being safe online. But the great thing is this is research-based. They've gone into schools, and they've researched the challenge that children are facing. I was going to show maybe 30 seconds of this.
The digital world is an exciting place of dreams, creativity, and connections. But it is also a place that can bring stress, sorrow, and destruction. Information and identities can be stolen. Violence and pornography are common. And bullying and shaming can be so cruel. Kids today grow up looking more at screens than faces. So what is the solution? DQ, or Digital Intelligence Quotient, is the collection of social, emotional, and cognitive abilities that enable individuals to deal with the challenges and demands of digital life. DQ starts with 8 core digital citizenship skills: digital citizen identity, screen time management, cyberbullying management, cybersecurity management, digital empathy, digital footprint management, critical thinking, privacy management. Beyond knowledge, these abilities must be rooted in human values of integrity, respect, empathy, and prudence. So how do we guide a child to acquire these skills and values to be empowered users of technology? DQ World is an online and mobile learning platform to empower children.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that's just a quick overview of DQ World. And the reason I wanted to show you that, we can talk about it, but if we look at that video, we can see it's really been designed at the age group for children and for students. And that's designed for 9 to 12-year-olds. It works on both sides. We're test piloting that this year in our school, getting great feedback for students. When we go into a class and we say, okay, we're going to talk about safety online and Facebook, students roll their eyes, sit back. They don't want to hear from teachers about safety online. But when you show them this cartoon or comic environment for learning about safety online, suddenly you're talking to them at their level, and they're able to interact at their level. Something else we've been doing, this year was the first time we visited ETDA, and this is great. This came about because of a parent of one of our students. So fantastic, we had a visit here. And ETDA went through 4 different themes of digital citizenship again, and we had students in the war room at ETDA, there's a picture there. We had parents here, and we had professionals working at ETDA educating students about online safety. But not just about online safety, they were looking at the opportunities that the internet provides as well, and they talked about e-commerce as one of the themes. Now, when we talk about online safety, going back to that thought about cyberbullying, the education that we provide about online safety doesn't always have to be online. There's a group that's just come out of Australia a few years ago called Project Rocket, and they've got funding from a huge amount of organizations now to share this message. Project Rocket takes very much an offline approach to dealing with cyberbullying. Their thoughts are, well, cyberbullying is still bullying. So let's attack the root problem, which is bullying. Okay? This is their mission statement: a world where kindness and respect thrive over bullying, hate, and prejudice. And all young people are free to realize their potential. When we think about that, I mean, that doesn't just apply to bullying, that kind of applies to everything that we want young people to be today. Here's just a very quick clip of Project Rocket.
So Luce and I started Project Rocket 10 years ago when we were fresh out of school ourselves, because we looked around, saw how much bullying sucked, and realised that no one was doing anything about it in a way that actually reached young people themselves.
The difference between these workshops and other workshops is it's actually engaging.
It's fun. They actually listen to you, and they're not just telling you what to do, they're giving you a solution to the problem.
Project Rocket is different because you don't need the rules of the classroom, you're just relating to the kids on their level, which is really hard to do when you're a teacher at times.
I was just talking to a group of Year 8 students from the workshop this morning. Their feedback was overwhelmingly positive. They just thought it was fantastic. They loved the activities, they loved the fun.
It's difficult to connect with a student as a teacher because the kids have this idea that you are a teacher and you have this authority over them, where Project Rocket comes in, they're different, they're fresh, they're hip.
Okay, that's a quick overview. And so Project Rocket, you heard from a student, we heard from a teacher, and we heard from an administrator, and they all said this is great because it's not teachers telling the kids what to do. It's not parents telling our kids what to do. It's somebody different coming in this very fun environment and talking about some of the challenges that students face. It goes back to that, it takes a village. It just doesn't take just the people we're involved in at school or in the home. It does take a number of different people. Now, I'm not going to show this. This is another one. This is Interland, and this has just been launched by Google this month, in fact. It's brand new, and it's another online platform for combating digital safety. All of these platforms, there's so much money going into digital safety right now. This is the age for digital citizenship. We're getting there. We've got choice. So where are we going to go to? So we've got all of these resources available to us. Well, where are we going to go with that? Well, a couple of thoughts before I'm going to introduce Rollin I want to leave you with is this idea of digital citizenship. What one of my takeaways would be is this, is that we're stepping back from the digital. Students don't know about digital lives. They're saying that we're online, we don't understand life offline. We just have life. So maybe we need to drop that digital out of digital citizenship and very strongly focus on a couple of things. One is opportunity, and the second is freedom. There's a few different ideas on what freedom is. Well, I'm going to give this definition for freedom. Let's give our kids the freedom to be who they want to be and create what they want to create. And I'm going to leave you with that. Ajahn Rollin is going to now talk about this a little bit more. So Rollin, if you'd like to come up to stage, please.
Okay, thank you very much, James. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experiences as an educator. As I mentioned before, I've been teaching for over 20 years, and now in administration as well. I've been very lucky to have worked in schools that are very supportive and very eager to empower students by giving them technology and giving them access to technology, both in the United States and in Thailand. So my experiences have been very positive, I know that's not the case for all educators, but my experiences have been very good, and I chalk that up to the school and the structure of the school. However, along the way, it hasn't always been smooth. So both in America and in Thailand, schools which have great ambitions still run into roadblocks. Even though everybody has what they feel is a shared vision, there's always going to be some stumbling blocks when it comes to giving students access to the internet, for one, and also tools to access the internet. So my talk, I'll just talk a little bit about this idea of it takes a village and the fact that there are 4 levels to this village as I see it and as I have encountered in my career. And along the way, in education, if we want to empower students, we want to give students the best education possible, we have to make sure that these 4 tiers or these 4 layers are in sync and that they're working together. So I'll just kind of bring up some of the examples of this and maybe share some of my experiences with this as well. So it takes a village, and this village that we've talked about, this combination of layers to success in the classroom. As a teacher, as an educator, my focus is on student learning. So that is a long way down from government, but government is a big part of this, obviously. And then I see school administration below that, educators, that's me, and then, of course, students. So with a focus on student learning, and as James discussed, giving students access to the best possible learning environments they can have, all 3 of these layers above the students really have to be working together. And there's times where it works really well, but there's also some challenges as well. So I'll talk a little bit about those. All right, so government. This is a big one, and I am an educator, so I'm not in government. But this is obviously, when I was teaching in the United States, the different curriculum changes that came down from the federal government obviously make their way down to student learning. And teachers ultimately, educators ultimately, are the filter for that. So, for example, the United States has the Common Core curriculum, which is now changing. It's in a transition period right now. That was a federal change, and eventually it makes its way down to teachers who are in the classroom and teaching to that particular curriculum. So government is big. Obviously, it has a big effect. So my question here, and I think everybody's question is, what is the role of government? And with technology, how do we balance what we're using technology for? And at the government level, I highlight a couple of points here. We have, in the United States, an organization called Code for America, which is basically a private group which is advocating that technology and information systems and networks should have their main focus should be citizenship and empowering. The government should be using those tools to deliver services to people in the United States. So this could be everything from unemployment, right? If somebody is out of work, the use of technology, they're already registered in a database, they automatically get a notification where to go to collect their benefits, something along those lines. So this is one group working to use technology in a positive way. I show the latest tweet I could find from the President of the United States. Technology is used by everybody now, which is quite interesting, even at the government level. I think the previous president was the first to start using Twitter, and now we have our president, Donald Trump, is using it on a very regular basis. So how does the government use technology, and how does the government use technology to benefit the citizens in that particular country? I think that's a really big question that not just the United States, but other countries may be facing as well. Where does technology fit into governance? From an educator point of view, as I said before, we are faced with curriculum changes. That's the biggest obvious one, which we're always waiting for. But on another level, obviously it could be for services and for providing services for people, okay? So interesting talking about cybersecurity, but also cyberbullying. Thought that was appropriate for this particular talk. Okay, so at the next level, school administration. Every school has an administration which wields a tremendous amount of power with decision-making for infrastructure. The most obvious one is purchasing of technology and networking. So what has happened, and a really short timeline, since about 2011, there has been a massive increase in spending for one-on-one devices in the United States and in other countries as well. And especially around 2013, when the iPad, Apple's iPad, started to make its way into schools, lots of school districts in the United States started to propose that this was a solution to replace textbooks. And from a top-down approach, that sounded good. At first, Apple and Pearson Publishing decided that they would load these iPads as textbooks and give them to all students in the LA school system. Unfortunately, that top-down approach didn't work because the teachers were not prepared for that, and also, ultimately, the students weren't prepared for that. So this headline came from a news clipping. It was somewhere over $1 billion of budgeting and lawsuits and all sorts of problems, ultimately labeled as a complete failure. And it's quite a shame when we see schools that struggle for budgets, and then we have sort of a massive amount of money which could have been directed in other places. So I see that as the top-down approach. School administration makes a decision, and that decision is mandated, forced upon the teachers and the students, and ultimately the administration or even the district has to deal with the consequences of that. So the other approach, which is sort of the opposite, is having the schools develop their own solutions for technology and forcing teachers to come together and administrators to propose what they would like if they could have certain devices. What would they have and why? So that process takes longer, but ultimately ends up with better results, longer lasting results. And the only drawback is it does take quite a while. Some of the processes may be years in the making as case studies and pilot programs are rolled out. And partially, as this quote says on the bottom, if you, on paper, say that if we give all students an iPad, that's perfect. They're all going to learn more. But as the quote says, you can make a change that makes sense on its own, but when it's introduced into a school, it's very complex. It's not the same, and there's a lot of different elements that can disrupt how that particular device is used. So that is the school setting is something that we can't count on, we can't prepare for, and so that's why it's always better to have buy-in at the teacher or educator level and have them propose to the administration how they would like to teach their students and how they feel the students would best learn. So that is two different approaches, right? And they're both being used all around the world based on if you do a quick search on it. Different school districts claim that that the top-down approach has not worked. Some claim it does work. So that is a question to be thinking about, and part of that layer for providing services to students. Okay. Next, it's me, the educator. Okay. So teachers and as James talked about, digital citizenship. We are with the students all day long, and now we're using lots of different technology. Different web applications, moving from Web 2.0 to the next different layer of applications. And we as educators have a great responsibility because oftentimes we do have access to lots of resources. And we are creating the learning environments which students are spending their day in. And teachers in that setting, as they're preparing lesson plans, they have to be trained. They have to have proper support for teaching things about online safety, about cyberbullying, and be able to identify those characteristics. Now, when my experience is that teachers, if they're not familiar with digital citizenship, what will happen is that you have a couple of different reactions. Some teachers, some educators will decide that they're not going to grant access to things such as phones or iPads. And that is, as James talked about, shutting down access, but it also removes a problem, right? It's one way that they don't have to police, they don't have to face any consequences as students are searching the internet or using the internet. Increasingly, those educators are rare. As a recent study showed, over 75% of 3,000 teachers surveyed in the United States believe that technology, yes, it has to be used in the classroom. And that number is on the rise. Even within my own school, educators who formerly did not use any devices or technology in the classroom are now learning. They're out learning new ways to reach their students. So it is on the increase, for sure. However, back to information systems, is that teachers do encounter some frustrations along the way. So of the groups of teachers who agree that technology is very important for student learning, that same group of yeses also feels that the networks are not adequately supported. It doesn't keep up with the actual technology itself. So educators on the ground, we have to focus on how to create learning environments which are positive, and also we have to model that behavior amongst ourselves as well. We have to use those devices, use the network, use the applications in effective ways. Okay. So kind of wrapping up and getting back to students, right? Again, my focus is all about student safety, student learning in the classroom. And we, as educators, we realize that technology is here, and it's here to stay, and it is how students see the world. They see it through a lens that they access online. Their learning takes place online. In our school, we use lots of tools which are online. Students are constantly accessing that. And because of that, we need to be able to teach the students and talk to the students and create this dialogue about how their data is being used when they access different websites. Do they understand that that information is being collected. It's being collected, it's being possibly sold. That information and that data trail that students use is something that they need to be aware of. And oftentimes when I discuss with students, when I use different tools and talk about how advertising is created by a website, that particular trail, how does the website make money? I was talking about CNN the other day with my students. How are these advertisements being generated, and how are they being directed? And to my surprise, many students didn't understand that process. And one of the goals, one of the latest goals for educators is to be able to teach students about their footprint. What are they leaving behind as they navigate the internet? Okay. So in closing, we'd like to open it up for discussion. If anybody would like to ask some questions, again, we're both educators, teachers, a little bit different perspective than everybody else in this room.
Yeah, hi, do we have any questions? We can, maybe we could take questions in Thai and somebody could help translate. Yeah, hey, we've met before.
Oh.
Awesome.
Thank you for a great presentation. I was wondering, especially when you talk about the footprints that people leave on the internet, for children, how do you explain to them that whatever they post today on Facebook or other social media, especially pictures, can haunt them later on in life, because what goes on the internet stays on the internet.
Right.
As far as I found out so far, it's a concept they don't really understand, because they don't care as much about the future.
Yeah, I just had this conversation with somebody the other day, and I sounded like a really old man when I answered the question. I heard myself. I said, wow, I sound like an old man. I said, when I was your age, when I was in high school, a student, in high schools, kids would act like kids. Somebody might have a camera laying around. Somebody might take a picture of you doing something. And then a few weeks later, when their film ran out, they might go develop it. And then the pictures, 3-4 weeks later, you might see a picture of you doing something silly or inappropriate. And then those pictures ended up in a shoebox in the attic or somewhere. And I was telling this story to some of my students, and of course, it's really hard to give them that feeling, but I try to convey that everything is instant now, and it's live, right? We're live right now. And that is something that I think that we have to share those stories to make it personal, even if I did sound like a really old man when I was telling that story.
Hey, thank you. That's a really, really good question. I just want to tag on to that. The Facebook question, sharing your pictures online. Does anybody know, according to Facebook, how old should you be to have a Facebook account? Does anybody know the age to have a Facebook account? Anybody like to guess? Does anybody think it's 18? 12, nearly? It's actually 13. So according to the latest Facebook terms and conditions, you have to be 13 or older to have a Facebook account. Put your hand up if you think kids under 13 have Facebook. Who thinks that children under 13 today have access to Facebook? Yeah, right? A lot of kids have access to Facebook. So kids are getting online because we don't really understand what are all these terms and conditions that technology companies are sharing. A child who's 12 years old or 10 years old or 8 years old, they're not old enough to understand the impact of their actions today could come back to them in the future. And yet we're providing them with this stop block, the terms and conditions list, which we're supposed to read and understand. A quick question, who has Facebook here? Who has Facebook? Put your hand up if you have Facebook. Okay, put your hand up if you have read the Facebook terms and conditions. The big security policy. Well, of course you have. I know you have. That's right. It's like 20 pages long. Okay? We don't even read this, and yet we're expecting children to go online and to understand these risks. It's very difficult because they don't have a true understanding of the impact of their actions. And what do we do? How do we do this? So as Rollin was saying, well, we start with stories, and we start crafting stories, and that really comes back to what good educators do, is they craft stories into the learning. It's a good question. I think it's a challenge that we should all be helping kids face today. Thank you. Any more questions? Yeah. Actually, just at the back. Has anybody got a microphone?
I'm the teacher from the School of Law, University of Payao. Let me share some story that I'm very surprised. I have some nephew. His old is 4 years old, and he loves to see the YouTube because he wants to go to the very favorite program, the Thomas Train. Then, but he even know how to spell the alphabet. And he saw me many times, and after that, he tried to use the voice. They have some program about the picture of microphone, and when you talk something, when you say something, it will print. And he can go to the YouTube he said YouTube, then it's come to YouTube. And after that, he said, Thomas Train. Oh, I'm very surprised. Then I think how we can educate them, and maybe in the future, not soon, we will far behind them because this is like an instinct. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And I think that's a really good point, actually. Voice access to computers, to the internet. I have a smart TV at home, which is voice access. And my children are a little bit older right now. What age is your nephew? 4 years old, there we go. Well, if I have a smart TV and a 4-year-old at home, they can access everything on the internet. Even my TV has a browser, it has YouTube. All they need to do is look at the TV and say something, and hopefully they're going to have good English pronunciation, and they get Thomas the Tank Engine and not something else. It's a very good question. How are we going to prepare the kids? How are we as parents going to be able to do that? I mean, when you have a 4-year-old, you're still a new parent. How are we going to support parents to get to that position? I think it's a great question. And just going back to some of the platforms which are educating children, they're going down to about starting a career at 6 years old. But from what you just mentioned, we need to think about it with even younger children with access to media. If Rollin, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, my daughter, the very similar story, is accessing content and has a wide array of materials available to her. And I think that one of the reasons why some of those programs go down to 6, right, is that at a certain age, it's hard for them to understand how to act online, right? They're going for Thomas the Train, they're going for that video. At a certain point, they have the cognitive ability to understand what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. And I would say that getting on to 5 or 6 years old, then they're starting to be able to have a discussion with you about how and why there are limits on their access. Now, my daughter goes to a Thai school, and we have the summer break finished last month, but we were here for the summer break in April and May, and as a 7-year-old, we had to draw up a contract, which is very common, I think, in a lot of houses. And the contract was a checklist of things that she needed to do each day before she had access to a screen. And that was very simple list of things, such as make your bed, get dressed, brush your teeth, all of that stuff, have breakfast, and getting down to read a book, an actual book, and exercise outside for 30 minutes. And I think for me, I grew up in the countryside. One of the things that kids are doing with all this screen time is that they're not moving as much. And that's my concern as a parent. And I think that, that's something to roll into the education as well. Now, Thailand is very hot, so moving is not as easy as it is in Vermont, where I am from. But certainly it's something that, as an educator, I try to get students doing different things, not just always focused on the screen as well.
Great. Do we have any more questions? Any questions?
No one else.
Great.
Okay. I have another question and to share with you both. As the teacher, when we want to have the examination, many of the teachers in my university, they always send the question of the examination by Facebook Messenger. And many times when we teach in the class, we try to use the media to introduce. They always see the phone while we teach. Then we try to recommend them to use the internet or social media for the knowledge more than entertainment. And after that, unlucky that sometimes the computer in my university is not protect for this, After I go to my Facebook and I try to educate them, and after that I log out, but the password still be on there. But this case is not happened to me, happened to my friend. Finally, some of the students can know about the question of the examination. It means we have to make the examination again. You understand?
Yeah.
Because everything is spread very quick for the examination question.
Because it's so easy to share. Exactly. Yeah.
How I don't know how to say how to protect, because this involve about the system of the computer in the university also. Sometimes they told me that they always erase every time by the program, but we never sure. And even like this happen. Okay, thank you. How to protect?
Well, just thinking along the same lines for a second, I have a story from our school. I had a teacher come up to me. We had just rolled out Google Apps within Google G Suite within our school, which makes it very, very easy for students to share their work and to collaborate, which is a very positive use. I had one teacher approach me and say, "Oh, James, your Google Apps," well, I wish it was my Google Apps, but it's not, "your Google Apps, the students have shared all the questions from their homework." Well, in my mind, I was thinking, well, great, they're collaborating, they're working together. It's like, no, it's not good, they should be working alone. Well, I completely disagree. I think students should be collaborating. Now, in this instance, it's that ease of sharing material online, which is a big risk for everything, not just for exam questions, but for our own opinions. And we hear many stories about universities checking work for plagiarism now as well. I think it's not just about the questions. I think that comes way back. If we go back a few years, you're in university at Payao, and if we go back a few years, maybe 5, 10, or 15, in the education of students, and about acting responsibly online, and about the consequences for not doing that. I think we really need to focus on that. By trying to solve that problem there, I think we're just trying to put a Band-Aid on a cut. I think we need to go back and stop the children from falling over. That would be my input.
Right. I would just say that transparency. Students, if we can teach students that everything that they do is transparent, from my experience is that those things, behavior such as that declines. When they know that everything that they access or everything that they're doing is you're able to follow that trail. For example, we don't have, as you saw from the survey that James presented, we don't have a lot of cyberbullying reported, but a couple of years ago we did have a case, and as soon as we let the students know in class that everything you do, every keystroke, everything that you do on this platform, this was, I think, Moodle at the time, we can access that. It was in a forum within our learning management system. Literally, that type of behavior dropped off. And I think that we'll see that increase. I think that hopefully, as people understand the transparency of what they're doing, that type of behavior will decrease.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Hi. I'm just wondering that you both work in the Patumwan demonstration school. Have there been any programs that you put in place to educate the students or into the curriculum or educate the parents and whether they work or not? And do you have or are you aware of any plans that that will be expanded to other public schools or other schools in Thailand? But how do you work with EDA, if any?
Yeah, well, let's kick off with what we started doing just a few years ago. We started trying to introduce, as we were learning about digital citizenship and learning how do we share that with students, we started introducing a digital citizenship day. And it was very simply where every teacher, or some teachers, were interacting with students with digital citizenship and talking about some of the themes. Over the years, that's expanded from a day to a week, and this year now we have a full one-year curriculum for our new students on digital citizenship and digital safety. And that's actually the DQ initiative that I showed earlier. So that's a one-year curriculum. So yeah, we're gradually just basically every year ramping up, we're increasing what we're doing within school. Now, parents is a very good group that we wish we could communicate with more, and it's always a challenge to communicate with parents on the same level, have parents and educators in the same room talking about what we're doing with students. And I think it's a really good question. Some schools, not within our schools yet, but some schools do have parent conferences about digital safety. And they actually begin with educating parents just how to be safe on Facebook or online. So educating parents first, before they have that communication about, well, how do we keep the kids safe as well? Because, you know, children today, they can get their phone out and post a picture to Facebook in seconds. It takes me like a minute. Take the picture, find out where the app is, and so on. Kids are doing it so fast. They're much quicker than we are. They're way more advanced than us, so we have to understand that behavior. So I think parent conferences would be a great solution to that. As to rolling out to other schools in Thailand, outside of I know the international school community, they have a large number of activities going on. Rollin, do you know of any programs going on in Thai schools?
No, I was just going to mention the acceptable use policy, though, and how important that is. So about this idea of digital citizenship, as James mentioned, was relatively new to us about 2 years ago. It was something that we felt was very important, and we rolled out a program, and then we created an acceptable use policy for everybody on campus. Regardless of what device you're using, if you're using the school network even, the Wi-Fi, the policy included you in, and what that policy outlined for students, teachers, parents, everyone, was what kind of behaviors are appropriate and what kind of behaviors are not acceptable on school grounds. And so that was part of when we first did the digital citizenship promotion, also presenting that to the parents at the first parents meeting and getting parents to read through it and acknowledge that they had read the acceptable use policy. And that was everything from breaking a computer to cyberbullying to what other type of behaviors were talked in?
Yeah, digital footprint, plagiarism.
Yeah.
So on and so on.
Yeah, plagiarism, obviously a big one. And so that policy is a live document. We update it every year. We just updated it because how quickly in technology the language becomes dated within a year, and you look back and you see a word and you think, what? That doesn't exist anymore. So we're constantly updating that policy.
Yeah, I think so we have this policy, and I was complaining about the Facebook terms and conditions. Very quickly, after a couple of years, our policy got longer and longer and longer. So we prefaced it with a mission statement on digital citizenship. And we just have a short one sentence, what we expect from the kids. And it just comes down to productivity, safety, and freedoms and opportunities. It's a very short thing. I think we're approaching lunchtime. I just want to say in closing, well, thank you very much for the audience here today. Just in closing, I'd like to say from educators, from our corner, we don't have all the answers. It really, when it goes back to taking a village, really if you get the opportunity to support schools in any way and to support parents, it really does take a village. It takes the input of a lot of people. But also let's involve kids, children, students in that conversation as well. Let's not forget that they have a voice, and quite often they'll know more about the tech than we do. So thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch and enjoy the rest of the day. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the educators sharing your amazing experience with us today. Thank you so much. นะคะก็ถือว่าเป็นอีกหนึ่งหัวข้อที่น่าสนใจแล้วก็อยู่ในกระแสสังคมเช่นเดียวกันขอบคุณมากๆที่ช่วยกันตั้งคำถามนะคะเพราะว่าคำถามนี้เราก็ได้บันทึกไว้ตอนไลฟ์นะคะกับ YouTube คนที่ไม่ได้อ่านหรือว่าไม่ได้เข้ามาร่วมงานกับเราอย่างน้อยเนี่ยก็ยังได้มีประสบการณ์ร่วมกันกับเราในคำถามที่ทุกท่านถามออกมานะคะหลังจากนี้ถ้าเกิดมีตรงไหนที่ยังติดอยู่ก็ยังท่านยังอยู่ตรงนี้2คนนะคะสามารถแวะมาถามได้หรือว่าเป็น choice ที่ท่านได้ยกตัวอย่างไว้ให้อย่างเช่น DQ World Project Rocket หรือว่า Kai Kingdom ยังไงก็แวะเข้าไปดูได้นะคะว่าตัวอย่างหรือว่าประสบการณ์ที่เกิดขึ้นในรอบโลกนี่เป็นยังไงแล้วก็สามารถหยิบยกไปใช้กับทางองค์กรของท่านได้ยังไงหรือว่าคนใกล้ตัวท่านได้ยังไงบ้างนะคะเอาละค่ะนี่จบหัวข้อที่2แล้วแต่ขออนุญาตยังไม่ปล่อยให้ไปพักทานอาหารกลางวันเพราะเรายังสัญญากันไว้ว่าเรามีอะไรคะลัคกี้ดอใช่แล้วตอนนี้ขออนุญาตแจก3รางวัลโดยดิฉันเองค่ะนะคะจะขออนุญาตขยับมาตรงกลางสักนิดหนึ่งโดยของรางวัลชิ้นแรกนะคะจะเป็น wristband 8 GB โอ้ยดูกันนะคะว่าใครจะเป็นผู้โชคดีท่านนี้นะคะเป็นสุภาพบุรุษค่ะคุณอดิศักดิ์ไทยรัตน์หรือว่ากายรัตน์เนี่ยนะคะจาก Exim Bank ค่ะอยู่ไหมคะยกมือขึ้นนิดนึงค่ะขอเสียงตบมือด้วยค่ะให้กับคุณอดิศักดิ์ค่ะโอ้โหเป็นสีน้ำเงินเลยนะคะสวยงามเลยไม่หายแน่นอนเพราะว่าสามารถสวมเป็นแบบ wristband ได้เลยเรียนเชิญค่ะขอเสียงตบมือให้อีกครั้งหนึ่งนะคะขอบคุณมากค่ะขอบคุณมากนะคะเดี๋ยวเราถ่ายรูปรวมนะคะยืนด้านหลังสักครู่หนึ่งท่านที่2เดี๋ยวมาดูกันค่ะ wristband เหมือนกัน8 GB นะคะคิดว่าเป็นสุภาพบุรุษเช่นเดียวกันค่ะคุณเจษดามาเองค่ะจากบางจากคอร์ปอเรชั่นค่ะขอเสียงปรบมือด้วยค่ะดีใจที่อยู่กันครบนะคะไม่แน่ท่านสุดท้ายอาจจะเป็นสุภาพสตรีรางวัลค่อนข้างใหญ่เหมือนกันนะคะเดี๋ยวขออนุญาตขอ wristband ทางด้านหลังนิดนึงนะคะขอบคุณมากค่ะขอเสียงปรบมือให้อีกครั้งหนึ่งนะคะและขอโชว์รางวัลก่อนได้ไหมเอ่ยเดี๋ยวไม่ตื่นเต้นก่อนทางเข้าเที่ยงเรียกน้ำย่อยสักนิดหนึ่งอันนี้นะคะเป็นกุญแจล็อกที่สั่งปลดล็อกจากมือถือก็แล้วก็จะสมมติว่ามือถือหายเราก็กดเป็นรหัสมอสได้ด้วยนี่เทคโนโลยีล้ำไปขนาดไหนแล้วนะคะราคา 2,990 บาทเดี๋ยวมาดูกันว่าสุภาพบุรุษหรือสุภาพสตรีท่านไหนจะเป็นคนได้ไปควรนิดหนึ่งนะคะโอเคคุณสิทธินนท์สุขสำราญจาก DTI ค่ะสุภาพบุรุษนะคะเดี๋ยวขอมอบให้เป็นถุงเลยแล้วกันดีใจด้วยค่ะนี่นะคะกับรางวัลใหญ่ช่วงนี้ขอเสียงปรบมือให้อีกครั้งหนึ่งนะคะขอบคุณมากค่ะและนี่ยังขออนุญาตถ่ายรูปรวมอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะคะระหว่างนี้จะขออนุญาตขอบคุณสปอนเซอร์ไปด้วยวันนี้เรามีสปอนเซอร์ใจดีหลากหลายบริษัทเลยค่ะบริษัท Microsoft ประเทศไทยจำกัด สำนักงานกสทช.สำนักงานคณะกรรมการกระจายเสียงกิจการโทรทัศน์และกิจการโทรคมนาคมแห่งชาตินะคะบริษัทเบย์คอมพิวติ้งจำกัดบริษัท AC Infotech จำกัดขอเสียงตบมือให้กับผู้โชคดีทั้ง3ท่านนะคะต่อไปนะคะขอบคุณบริษัท Arbor Networks บริษัทต่อไปค่ะเป็น Bangkok Bank ค่ะและต่อไปบริษัท Blue Ciba จำกัดนะคะธนาคารไทยพาณิชย์บริษัท G-Able จำกัด NTT Communication เช่นเดียวกันนะคะ Palo Alto Networks ธนาคาร UOB Sands Institute นะคะแล้วก็ Line Thailand รวมถึงอินเทอร์เน็ตแรงเต็มพิกัดจาก Cat Telecom ด้วยขอบคุณมากนะคะต่อไปอย่าไปไหนช่วงนี้จะขออนุญาตพักเบรกช่วงเที่ยงก่อนและกลับมาพบกันกับหัวข้อที่เผ็ดร้อนกับ International Cybercrime Ring and Investigation หัวข้อที่ 3 นั่นเองค่ะช่วงนี้เชิญพักผ่อนกันตามอัธยาศัยนะคะขอบคุณมากค่ะ